We are live. Welcome to the November 2024 episode of Opportunity Zones Office Hours. I'm Jimmy Atkinson, founder of OpportunityZones.com. I'm going to be taking your OZ questions live in just a minute. So if you have any questions about Opportunity Zones, you can submit them by using the chat. But before we begin, are you looking to take your Opportunity Zone strategy to the next level, but maybe you're not sure where to go? OZ Insiders offers comprehensive premium content and networking to help you get started. Our monthly masterclass meetings cover a wide range of topics from fundamentals to advanced, ensuring you have what you need to thrive. As a member of OZ Insiders, you'll get access to our exclusive online community, monthly group coaching, and monthly masterclass meetings, providing you with valuable Opportunity Zone networking opportunities and guidance from the best Opportunity Zone professionals in the industry. Whether you're a beginner or you're looking to get to the next level, we have what you need at OZ Insiders. Visit ozinsiders.com to learn more. That's ozinsiders.com. Welcome again to the November 2024 edition of OZ Office Hours. It is Monday, November 4th, 2024, Election Day Eve. And you can join me the first Monday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern Time to get your OZ questions answered live. So whatever questions you have about Opportunity Zones, I'm here to answer them for the next 30 or so minutes. I like to cap it at about 45 minutes, although I think we went past 50 minutes last month. I'm going to try to stick to the time this time around, November 2024. Just type your questions into the chat, whether you're on YouTube or on LinkedIn. You can submit your questions through the live chat. Coming up, by the way, in just another day here, really, is my big trip to Washington, D.C. for the Novogradac OZ Summit at the Fairmont Hotel in Washington, D.C. That's taking place this Wednesday, November 6th. I'm actually heading into town tomorrow afternoon. I'm hosting a big dinner for our OZ Insiders members. That's another benefit of OZ Insiders, is invitations to our exclusive in-person events. And, you know, we have our last one of the year coming up at a restaurant right around the corner from the hotel where the Novogradac conference will be taking place the next day. So, by the way, if you're in Washington, D.C. now, or you're heading there for the conference, if you're planning on going to the conference, let me know. Send me an email or feel free to type it into the chat. Just say, hey, I'm going, or I'm going to be there. It'd be great to hear from anybody who is planning on being there. There's going to be about, I think last time I checked, we had a head count of 19 people coming to the dinner tomorrow night. I might still squeeze in one or two more. So let me know if you're planning to attend the Novogradac OZ Summit Wednesday in Washington, D.C. And of course, we have one other event coming up. My big event, our flagship event at OpportunityZones.com, OZ Pitch Day, is coming up on November 14th. You can learn more and register for that event by heading to OpportunityZones.com. We're going to get to the questions in a moment here, so start submitting them through the chat. I see a couple already. Andy Higgins is here. He says, "What's up, everybody?" And then we'll get to his question in a minute here. But one of the most frequent questions I get is, "Hey, Jimmy, I checked out the map of the Opportunity Zones. We've got a project site that's really close to an Opportunity Zone. It's just on the other side of the county, or it's literally across the street, or it's just on the other side of the highway. Can I get this zone extended, or can I make my area into an Opportunity Zone? So how do I go about doing that?" And unfortunately, it's not possible to change the Opportunity Zone map. And I'll go to the map right now, because another big question I get asked, probably the most common question I get asked, is, "Hey, where can I find the map of Opportunity Zones?" Well, we have a map on our website. Just go to OpportunityZones.com/map, or go to OpportunityZones.com and click on map in the top nav here. It'll take you to this page, our Opportunity Zone map. And I'll pick on Fort Worth, Texas right now. Let me see if I can zoom into Fort Worth, because that's where I am right now, is my home office in Fort Worth. And by the way, this is a totally made up example. Nobody's actually come to me with this exact problem. But let's say this Opportunity Zone here that kind of straddles the Chisholm Trail Parkway, brand new beautiful toll road heading south of Fort Worth. I drive on it pretty frequently. Let's say I'm developing right on this lake right here, let's say. I don't even know what this is, by the way. I haven't even taken a look at this. This is just a totally ridiculous example. But let's say I'm developing on this lake right here, and you can see it falls just outside the opportunity zone. So I'll sometimes get somebody ask me, hey, can I get that thing extended over a little bit? And the answer again is no. This is the map. This map got set in stone, for better or worse, in 2018. And you cannot extend a zone or designate a new zone. Now, what you can do is if you have just one project and it's not in a zone, you're kind of out of luck. If you have a portfolio of projects, a pipeline of projects, and a lot of them are in opportunity zones, and you need to squeeze one more in that isn't in an opportunity zone, you could do that potentially. So a qualified opportunity fund remains in compliance if 90% of its assets are good assets. If the capital is deployed into qualified opportunity zone business or qualified opportunity zone property. So there is a way where, let's say you have 10 projects and they're all of equal value. 9 of them could be in a zone, and that last one could actually fall outside the zone, but still be funded through a qualified opportunity fund. It would technically be in compliance and be totally okay. Take whatever I say with a grain of salt, by the way. That's conceptually how it works, but you want to check with your CPA to get professional guidance on that. With that said, let's see what else I have here. Oh yeah, one more new feature for today's episode. I'm gonna start asking you a question, and you feel free to chime in the chat. Well, I already asked you one. I asked you, are you going to the Novigrad OZ Summit, or are you in DC or heading to DC? I'd love to see you or hear from you. That's question number one. The big question, the question of the day I want to ask everybody is, what is your single biggest opportunity zone challenge? Let me know, and I'll see if I can address it. But with that, we will go to the questions. And first question is from Andy Higgins. He says, my question, who will win the Ohio Senate race tomorrow? Since you already predicted Trump will win the presidency. And I did predict that, by the way. I stated my final odds of a Trump victory in the election taking place tomorrow. It was about 60%, actually a little bit lower than what the betting markets had at the time as of a week ago. Although at the moment, it looks like Trump's trending a little bit below 60% chance. Andy, I don't know. I haven't been following the Ohio Senate race. You would have to ask Shay Hawkins that question. But if anybody is following the Ohio Senate race and wants to chime in there, please do so. That would be great. I did have a few questions that were emailed into me earlier this week, actually just this morning, because I sent that big email out. So I'm going to go to those. And if anybody has any live questions that they'd like to get addressed, feel free to chime in, use the LinkedIn chat or use the YouTube chat to submit your question. But first, let's go to this question from Bruce. Bruce emailed me this question early this morning. Thanks, Bruce, for reaching out. He says, and I edited this one down a little bit because I had a character limit, but he said, hey, we may be getting a new administration, is how he led the email. To which I would say that's not true. It's not we may be getting a new administration. We're definitely getting a new administration because Biden is out, and it's either going to be Harris or Trump, unless Bruce knows something. I don't think Biden's in it again. So there will be a new administration is the way I look at it. Although I take his point, the party may or may not change. In light of the fact that we are getting a new administration and that capital gain rates might go up, can we pay our taxes on the capital gains that we deferred for our OZ fund business in advance? This is a great question. And the reason why this is interesting is this is the same question I was getting 4 years ago also, because 4 years ago on the eve of the election, we were looking at 4 more years of President Trump and a low tax rate environment, business-friendly environment. Or is Biden going to come in? And Biden has proposed possibly doing away with 1031s, possibly raising the capital gains tax rate. He hasn't gone away with 1031s, by the way, which I know isn't part of the question. But he also hasn't increased capital gains tax rate. If you had asked me 4 years ago, after the election, after we knew that Biden had won, what the capital gains tax rate would be here right now in 2024, I would have said, not exactly sure, but I'll bet you almost anything it's going to be higher than what it is today in 2020. And actually, it hasn't been, right? So that's been a bit of good news, is that the capital gains tax rate has not gone up. Now, if Harris wins the election, I think there's certainly a very good chance that that capital gains tax rate does go up. When it goes up, I don't know. Will it go up by December 31st, 2026? Will it take effect in the 2026 tax year, the deferral year for opportunity zones? I don't know, but it might. And it's a great question that you ask here, Bruce. The answer, first of all, I'm going to say I'm not 100% sure of this answer, but I'm pretty sure that the answer is no, because it's laid out pretty clearly in the statute that when you make an opportunity zone investment, your capital gain that you defer into an opportunity zone fund is deferred until December 31, 2026. I don't know if there's any sort of mechanism to pay it early. To the best of my knowledge, you have to realize it on December 31, 2026, and it will get taxed at the 2026 tax rate. I don't know what that's going to be. And there is a good likelihood. I would have said almost 4 years ago, there was a very strong likelihood. Now I'll say there's a very good likelihood that if Harris wins, that rate could go up. And that would be bad news for OZ investors. The good news is it's also good news for OZ investors, if you think about it, because at the end of the day, the opportunity zone tax incentive is a capital gain tax incentive. And you're going to get a big hit on your 2026 tax bill when you pay it in April of 2027, if the rates go up in particular. But if the rates do go up, think about the 10-year benefit you're getting. If you invested in an opportunity zone in, say, 21 or 22, when you go to exit that OZ investment 10 years down the road, 2032, 2033, 2034, what are capital gains rates going to look like then? I don't know. It depends who's in the White House, depends who controls the balance of power in Congress. But if we were expecting a capital gains rate to go up by 26 and maybe over the long term, maybe up even more, up by the 2030s, it makes OZ investing all that much more valuable. Just something to think about. Anyways, thanks for the question there, Bruce. Again, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to submit them in the chat. I'm answering your questions live for about 30 to 45 minutes here. Roger just chimed in with a live comment. He said, Trump helped to create the opportunity zone tax benefits. That he did, Roger. Although I would say that the idea of opportunity zones and its initial formation and initial legislation actually predates President Trump. But President Trump was the one who signed opportunity zones into law, and it was his White House that administered the program at inception. So it is labeled the Trump program for that reason. Trump takes a lot of credit for opportunity zones, as he should. So let's see this question here from Daniel. Daniel's next here on my list. He says, ours is a small OZ fund under $1 million, organized by a few local high net worth individuals to finance 2 projects in Delaware. Daniel, first of all, congratulations. That sounds awesome. I'm glad you're using the OZ tax incentive to help fund these 2 projects. How can we exchange information with other small OZ funds? I love this question, Daniel. I've got a couple areas of suggestion for you. It's really great to travel to in-person meetups, in-person events. There's a big one coming up in Washington, D.C. later this week. Might be a little bit tight for you depending on where you are. You say your projects are in Delaware, so if you're in Delaware, you're actually pretty close. I would actually urge you to get on up to Washington, D.C. later this week, Wednesday, November 6th, it is. Just looking at the calendar over there for the Novogradac Opportunity Zone Summit. There's going to be probably about 100 people there, I would have to guess, and a lot of them operators in the space. I don't think there's typically a lot of investors there. It's mostly other opportunities and professionals, fund managers, project sponsors, accountants, attorneys. It's just a really great room to mix and mingle with a lot of people doing a lot of the same stuff in opportunity zones. And then I would also encourage you to check out my mastermind group, OZ Insiders. We do have a number of small OZ fund sponsors who are members of our group, and we get together in person also for in-person meetups. We're having dinner. Those of us who are coming to Washington, D.C. tomorrow night, we have a dinner planned in D.C. tomorrow night, and then we meet once a month via Zoom for live group coaching and masterclass calls. So you can learn more about that at ozinsiders.com. Daniel, thanks for the note there. Thanks for the question. let me see here. I've got a question here from Andrew. Let me get to Andrew's question. Happy Monday, Jimmy and Andy. Happy Monday to you, Andrew. And he also mentions that he prays that Trump wins. My question is two-part but linked. So I'll get to part one here. Part one, would it make sense to set up a qualified opportunity zone fund in a tax-free state? Good question. Question number two, under the current QOZ regulations, can your OZ fund or OZ business operations lease office space as long as in QOZs? Okay, great questions. Question number one. This deals with the topic of nexus. And again, I'll just remind everybody, I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney. So consult with a tax attorney or your CPA to get advice on this particular situation here, Andrew. But what nexus really boils down to is which states have the authority or the claim to be able to tax you. So if you have a project in California, but you set up your qualified opportunity zone fund in Texas because Texas is a tax-free state, that doesn't really work, because California is still going to say, wait, your project's in California, you owe us money. You have nexus here in California. That makes sense, right? I would say if you have a project in Texas, you certainly don't want to set it up in a state that charges taxes. Your OZ fund, I wouldn't recommend setting up in New York or in California, because then you would potentially have nexus in those high tax states, and that wouldn't make sense. A lot of people do set up their OZ funds in Delaware or just their state where the project is located. I mean, I would say certainly it makes sense, but it might not really get you around the issue if the project itself has nexus in a state that has state taxes or that isn't conforming with the opportunity zone statute and regulations. So consult with your tax advisor for more advice on that. The second part of your question, under the current OZ regs, can your OZ fund or OZ business operations lease space? Yeah, so you can lease. There's no reason why you don't. There's no requirement that you have to own the building that you're operating out of. If you are an OZ business, you can certainly be a business that just leases space as long as it's in an opportunity zone, and the bulk of your operations are in an opportunity zone, and your headcount of your employees works most of their hours in an opportunity zone location. It's fine if you lease. Good question there. Let's move on to the next one here. This one's from John, and this is a big two-parter as well. John says, on 4/15/27, when all the previous long-term capital gains taxes are due, by the way, short-term also, you can defer short-term capital gains into an opportunity zone as well. But it's, anyways, when all the deferred gains taxes are due to the IRS and states for those deferred taxes, will the taxes be due to the state you live in now or the state you lived in at the time of the original gain? If it's to the current state you live in, many might be moving to Nevada, Texas, or Florida in 2026. Someone else has to have brought this up as we close in on that date. I have heard this question numerous times. I have not yet seen a good answer to this question, John. I don't know the answer to this question. I don't think there's a bright line test in the regulations or in the statute about opportunity zones. I think it kind of depends on what your CPA says, and different CPAs may interpret this question a little bit differently. I don't know the answer. I do know that it has been brought up quite a bit, and certainly, if you're talking about a gain of $100,000, maybe it's not worthwhile to move from California to Nevada. But if you're talking about a gain of a few $1 million and you might owe $1 million or more in taxes, maybe you do move. Maybe that is worth moving to Nevada from California for that 1 year. But I think it depends on a lot of facts and circumstances. And I think you would need to consult a tax attorney or a CPA for further guidance on that, because I don't have the answer to that question. I don't know if there is a clear black and white answer to that, but it is a great question, John. And I have gotten a lot. By the way, are you a tax attorney or a CPA? Anybody out there? If you know the answer to that question, please chime in, because I've heard this question a lot and I don't know the answer. And John, I'm going to go to the Novogradac Summit in Washington, D.C. With 100 other Opportunity Zone professionals later this week. And I will ask that question and see if I can get to the bottom of that. That's a really good one. I'm going to flag that to see if we can get that answered a little bit later, because I really like that one quite a bit. Nick asks, is there a substantial improvement requirement for a tenant / QOZB who is leasing from a non-QOZB landlord? What am I doing? Let's go full screen here. Sorry, I was stuck on my computer monitor for the last 10 minutes there. Substantial improvement requirement for a tenant QOZB who is leasing from a non-QOZB landlord. No, not necessarily. So the substantial improvement requirement really refers to real estate. So I guess I have a follow-up question for you, Nick. Maybe you can chime in. What type of QOZB are you referring to here? Is it just an operating business? And are you moving an existing operating business from outside of a zone into the zone? Or does the business already exist in the zone, in which case you would need to substantially improve the business by buying more equipment, by adding more desks, by adding more computers? So I would say yes and no. If you're just leasing, you don't need to improve the building, because the building is not your asset. It's the business that's the asset that needs to be either new or improved. Good question there, Nick. And feel free to chime in if you have any follow-up on that. Okay, let's go to Javid's question here. He asks, hi, Jimmy. I am new to OZ. Welcome. Must investors realize the deferred capital gains after 7 years? What happens to the original capital gains if kept in an OZ fund beyond 10 years? So the deferred capital gains, by the way, there was a 7-year hold time at one point in time. If you were an early investor in OZs, if you got into an OZ fund in 2018 or in 2019, there was a 7-year hold provision. If you achieved a 7-year hold prior to the end of 2026, you get a 15% basis step up on that initial, on your opportunities on investment, and your initial gain amount would essentially be reduced by 15% for the purposes of paying that tax liability. But there's no 7-year deferred thing now. It's simply everybody, regardless of when you invest in an Opportunity Zone fund, your deferral date is December 31, 2026. So even if you invest today, or if you invest on December 30th of 2026, you're deferring that gain until December 31, 2026. Second part of your question is, what happens to the original gain if kept in the fund beyond 10 years? Okay, so well, let's go to the whiteboard. I haven't gone to the whiteboard yet. Let's see. Where's my whiteboard? There it is. We figured it out. Okay, so by the way, if you come to the OZ Summit in Washington, D.C. this week, I've got a free pen for you, opportunityzones.com pen. These are hot off the presses, just arrived literally minutes ago to my office here. So the question is, what happens to the original gain? Okay, so you trigger a capital gain up here, right? And you have 180 days to put that money into a qualified opportunity fund. Okay, this qualified opportunity fund stays invested in qualified opportunity zone property, which can include qualified opportunity zone businesses, right? For 10 years. So 10 years go by. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? So on year 10 is when some sort of transaction could take place. It doesn't have to happen in year 10, by the way. You actually have until the year 2047. Somebody double check me on that. It's either 27 or it's either 47 or 28. But in this year, that's the last year you have to achieve the full benefit of opportunities on investing. Either a transaction needs to take place before the end of that year, or the asset value needs to be marked to fair market value. And it's at that point that you can no longer keep kicking the can down the road. By the way, this is not written in the statute. This is a regulatory date, and the IRS can change this date basically at any time. So if 2046 rolls around, maybe they maybe they rewrite that part of the regs and kick the can down the road a little bit more. It's a long way off. So what happens to the original gains? Well, the original gain is this right here, right? I'm going to get a different color here. This is your original gain right here. I'm going to call this OG for original gain. That pen's not working. We'll go to the green one. So this is your OG right here, your original gain. This is deferred until 12/31/26. Okay. No matter what, no matter when it gets invested, and no matter what happens here, this gain is deferred till this date right here. So you owe taxes on it in April of 2027, essentially. Okay. That's when taxes are due on that original gain amount. Okay. So what happens to the original gains if kept in the fund beyond 10 years? Well, the actual capital is in this qualified opportunity fund, right? I'll just mark it with a little circle here. This is where your capital is. So this is going into the underlying assets, and hopefully at some point it starts spitting off cash distributions back to the investor. And then at some point there's a sale or a transaction, or you sell your shares in the QOF, and hopefully you've reached this 10-year hold, right? At which point in time, this is what mechanically happens to all of the money you get in the transaction, is that the fair market value, or I'm sorry, the basis in the fund, your basis in the fund gets marked up to fair market value at time of disposition, which is French for there's zero capital gain, and therefore you would owe no capital gains taxes on that investment. Again, you have to achieve that 10-year hold. A lot of moving parts there. I hope that kind of explained it a little bit. Let's go back to the questions here. I'm going to get to my next one here. Brian and Megan, and this is another two-parter. So stick with me here for a second, everybody. Love these questions, by the way. Keep them coming. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, whether you're on YouTube or LinkedIn. Love to hear from you. Okay, Brian and Megan are on YouTube here. And their question is, do I need to have a property closed on with an address in an OZ to form a QOF and QOZB? No, you don't. You don't need anything to form a QOF or a QOZB. All you need is the LLC formation, essentially. So if you know how to make an LLC, form an LLC, that's it. And then you need to file the taxes for that QOF. And when you file the taxes for that QOF, you need to file Form 8996. And then you also need to form a QOZB and file taxes for that. But that one needs the QOZB doesn't get any special tax return document attached to it. In fact, please don't attach Form 8996 to your QOZB, because that caused a lot of problems in 2018 and 2019 and 2020, the first few years before everybody figured out how to do this. Anyways, let me get to the next very question. Is there a workaround to form these if you haven't? No, so you don't need to. You don't need to. I mean, there's funds that get created. I would say go ahead. If you trigger a big capital gain, go ahead and create the QOF, drop that money into the QOF, and then you can get the property later. You don't have to have it closed. Okay, part two, what address would I use on the fund and business? What are the best states to form these funds? And so a similar question we got earlier. Delaware is very common. I think Nevada is becoming more common. I always just like doing it. I wouldn't say always, but you might just want to consider your home state, the state that you're domiciled in, the state where the project is going to be located. And I think those are probably the states that make the most amount of sense. Talk to your tax advisor, or your tax attorney, or your formation attorney, your business attorney, to get suggestions on which state to file in. And then what address would you use? I like using the address of the registered agent service that I end up hiring. So when you go to create an LLC, you need a registered agent. Just put that address on there. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's something you can do. I'm not necessarily recommending you use LegalZoom, but you could do it in a few minutes on LegalZoom if you had to. But especially if you're going to be doing this as a QOF, I might not use LegalZoom. hire a competent, experienced OZ attorney to help you with these. And we have a list of opportunities and attorneys that we like a lot on our website at opportunityzones.com/advisors. /providers. I'm pulling that up on the screen right now. So let me get that one. It's this one here. Here we go. So recommended OZ service providers. This is a free page that we offer, opportunityzones.com/providers. Here's our 5 favorite OZ attorneys, and they're all members of our OZ Insiders mastermind group as well. Andrew Daup, Connie Rathbone, Jerry Ryson, Brett Siglin, and Ashley Tyson. That's Mr. Ashley Tyson, by the way. Don't get that twisted. So that's my recommended list. Great question there, Brian and Megan. Appreciate it. And let me know if you need any other assistance with that. Andrew, who had asked about would it make sense to set up in a tax-free state, and are you allowed to lease? He chimes in and says, "Thank you, good sir." So thanks, Andrew. I'm glad I was able to answer your question there. Let's see. Andy Hagan, Sweet Pen Jimmy. Thanks, Andy. Okay, Andrew's got another question for us. And we're at 30 minutes right now, so I think I'll just go for a few more minutes before I wrap up. Really appreciate all of the engagement today, all the questions. Keep them coming. If I don't get to your question today, I can try to address it via email, or I might end up holding it till next month. Andrew asks, if you have a low-income housing project built and stabilized before April 2027, can you use low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC, to deduct from taxes owed on that original gain? I don't know the answer to that one, Andrew. I'm not very well versed in LIHTC. I do know that it is possible, and that a lot of Opportunity Zone funds have layered in LIHTC, LIHTC money, low-income housing tax credit money, within their Opportunity Zone deal, particularly if they do have an affordable housing component. And it's great to do, right? But I don't know the answer to that question. Can you use LIHTC to deduct from taxes owed on original gain? I don't know the answer to that one, Andrew, but it's a great question. It's worth, reaching out to one of those attorneys that I just sent you to. Actually, who I would reach out to is a CPA group. There's 2 CPA groups that I really like a lot. One of them is Novogradac and Company. I'm partners with them on their, or I am a media partner of theirs, full disclosure, for their upcoming Novogradac OZ Summit. So I do like passing a lot of potential clients to them, Novogradac, that is. And they specialize in community development tax credits, like new markets tax credits, like historic tax credits, and like low-income housing tax credits. I'm sure they can point you in the right direction. And then one other accounting firm that I really like a lot is HCVT. And my guy over there is Blake Christian. He's a member of our OZ Insiders mastermind group as well. And he has deep expertise in opportunity zones and structuring these types of funds and deals. So Andrew, feel free to reach out directly, or send me an email, or shoot me another comment if you'd like me to help put you in touch with somebody who has the answer to that question. Let's see. We've got a couple more questions that I had queued up in the email here that I got via email. So I'm going to go to these last couple before I cut everybody loose for the day. By the way, if you're enjoying today's episode, if you like what we got going on here, give us a thumbs up on YouTube or on LinkedIn. Just hit that thumbs up button. It'll help other people find our show and the advice that we try to distribute to other Opportunity Zone operators all over the country. So the question from Dell came in via email. I've got it loaded up here. He says, we've been looking at QOZ for a while, post-sale of a family business, which first of all is great, right? Because you can, oftentimes if you're a real estate investor, you're kind of stuck between, do I do a 1031 or do I do an OZ? If you sell a business, like, you can't do a 1031. 1031 is only for real estate. OZs is the only thing really that you can potentially do. That's anything anywhere similar to a 1031, where you can defer and then essentially eliminate capital gains at some point down the road. So his question is, what asset class lights your fire? Self-storage, multifamily, single family, you name it. Okay, so what do I like? First of all, this is not investment advice. Okay. I'm not your investment advisor. Please consult with your investment advisor before making any investment decisions. Standard disclaimer there. I really like, and particularly using the lens that is opportunity zones, I really like residential. I like it for a couple of reasons. One, it's fairly stable over the long term. Two, the supply demand is incredibly imbalanced right now. We have, depending on who you ask, a 3 or a 4 or a 5 million unit housing shortage in this country. There's always demand for a roof over one's head. When if there's a black swan event or another pandemic, certain asset classes can kind of tumble, right, or fall out of favor. Hotel and office suffered terribly from the pandemic, right? Hotel's coming back in a big way. So in the short term, I actually like hotel quite a bit. Office, man, I don't know. I would not want to have purchased an office property in 2019 or 2020. And a lot of people who did, by the way, and a lot of OZ operators who did, are finding creative ways to convert them into multifamily now. But long term, I really like residential. I like it for, and I don't know if I'm necessarily picky about which specific subtype of residential. I think you can make a case for any of them: student housing, senior living, single family rentals, or BTR, built to rent, multifamily. There's a place. It kind of depends which geography you're targeting, where you are, which hyper local type of asset, type of subsector within residential may perform best. But overall, I'm just going to say residential for all the reasons I just gave. But also on top of that, if we're looking at opportunity zones as a tax policy that's supposed to impart some sort of public good, some of these asset classes, you kind of scratch your head at and wonder, well, how much good is this really doing, or how much good is that really doing? But if we're using opportunity zone tax dollars or a tax incentive, I should say, to fund the creation of more housing in this country, I really think that is something that's very defensible, something that folks on both sides of the aisle can really get behind. I think that's really one of the main reasons why opportunity zones were so strongly supported in bipartisan fashion from folks on both sides of the aisle early on, was that it was going to, yes, catalyze business development, catalyze economic development, revive some of these low income census tracts all across the country, but also housing. I mean, and opportunity zones have done an incredible job putting a huge dent in that 3 or 4 or 5 million unit shortage. Novogratec had some data from a couple months back. Hundreds of thousands of units have been funded by opportunity zone funds just in the first few years of the program. So big fan of residential. Hope that's a suitable answer for everybody there. Let's see. I'm going to get to this one last question here from Brian, and I'm going to go to the whiteboard one more time, and then we're going to cut everybody loose. Thanks again to everybody for participating today. But question from Brian. Let's get out my trusty blue one here. Is it true that the last qualified investment to opportunity funds valid on the last day of 2026? So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on here. I'm going to do a little calendar here, okay? And let's say this last day here is 31, okay? This is 2026, December, okay? So this is the deferral date. And in the statute, it is written that this is the last day that you can trigger a gain for investment into a qualified opportunity fund. So what does that mean? Well, that means, let's just write this out a little bigger here. December 31, 2026 is the last day to trigger a gain. But is it the last day to make an investment in an opportunity zone fund? Technically, no, because remember, a gain, you have 180 days to roll that gain over into a qualified opportunity fund. So let's add 180 there. And you know what you get? I had to Google this earlier, but you get June 29th, 2027. Little caveat here. June 29th, 2027 is the 180th day after December 31. So I might say, just to be on the safe side, get it in by June 28th. Gives you an extra day there to make sure you're on the safe side. So suffice it to say, late June of 2027 is the last day that you have to roll over a 2026 gain into an opportunity zone fund. Now, by the way, that is if that gain is triggered on exactly this date, December 31, 2026. If you trigger it earlier, if you trigger it on December, let's say you trigger it on a week earlier on the 25th, Christmas Day, December 2026, well, then just subtract 7 from here and you've got 21. So June 21 would be your day. Now, there's one other scenario, by the way, that can buy you even more time. And that is if you recognize a gain on a Schedule K1. So let me explain to you how this could potentially work. You trigger through a partnership that you are a member of a gain at any point in time during 2026. It can be on January 1. It could be on June 30th. It can be on December 31st of 2026. That gain on the partnership gets reported to you on a Schedule K1, 2026 Schedule K1. When do you get your K1s typically? Usually, I think they're supposed to be sent by February of the following year, so 2027. The IRS has said in this event where you trigger a gain through a partnership that gets reported to you on a Schedule K1, well, if you triggered a gain on January 1st, let's say, of 2026, but you don't even find out about it until February of 2027, you're way through your 180-day window. So the IRS has said, look, for the purposes of Schedule K1 gains, you can actually elect to use the due date of the partnership tax return as the start of your 180-day clock. And typically, for partnerships whose tax year follows a calendar year of January through December, March 15th of 2027 can be the start of your 180-day clock for any of these gains triggered at any point in time through 2026. Now, what happens if you add 180 days to March 15th, 2027? Well, you get September 11th of 2027. And again, that would be the 180th day. So call it this September 10th if you want to be on the safe side. Okay. So this is kind of the date that I'm using as this is it. This is the final date that anybody could ever possibly invest in an opportunity zone fund. Taking a new gain from 26 and rolling it into a QOF. This is the last date that you can do it on. And this is only available if that gain gets reported to you through a partnership Schedule K1. That's it. That's all I got for the show today. Again, if you enjoyed today's episode, really would appreciate if you give us a thumbs up. Thank you for everybody for being here today. It's going to be a pretty busy next few days for me. I got election day tomorrow. I'm headed to Washington, D.C. tomorrow. I've got my OZ Insiders dinner tomorrow night. I'm going to try to get to the answer to your question, John, about what happens if you move from one state to another during that period before 2026. And hopefully I can cover that on the next episode here, or shoot me an email. I'll see if I can get an answer to you via email. Now, one more time, let's hear from our sponsor, OZ Insiders. That's my group. Are you looking to take your OZ strategy to the next level and you don't know where to go? And did you like this episode today? This is pretty much what we do inside of OZ Insiders, which offers comprehensive premium content and networking to help you get started. Our monthly masterclass meetings cover a wide range of topics from fundamentals to advanced, ensuring you have what you need to thrive. Our next masterclass, by the way, is taking place next Tuesday, November 11th featuring Emily Lavery. She's going to be covering the election and what we can expect from the Super Bowl of Tax 2025 tax reform, As a member of OZ Insiders, you'll get exclusive access to our online community, monthly group coaching, monthly masterclasses, providing you with valuable OZ networking opportunities and guidance from the very best OZ professionals in the industry. So whether you are a beginner or maybe you're looking to get to the next level, we have what you need at OZ Insiders. Visit OZ Insiders to learn more. That's ozinsiders.com to learn more. Thank you so much, everybody, again, for watching today. That's all the time we have. Again, if you enjoyed today's episode, give me a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be back with another episode soon. Join us Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the OpportunityZones.com YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. I'll be back soon.